Before we dig in, a quick thank you to the sponsors ready to grow with the Soil Sisters. Tejas Tonic is the official beverage of the Texas Soil Sisters. We especially love that the hemp for Tejas Tonic is organically farmed in the Texas Hill Country, with farms in both Dripping Springs and Lukenbach, Texas. The Soil Sisters podcast is powered by B&P Electric. Whether you're building, remodeling, installing low-voltage landscape lighting, or in need of an inspection, B&P is your Central Texas electrical contractor. Find links to our sponsors in the podcast show notes or head over to txsoilsisters.co. You're listening to the Soil Sisters podcast, where we dig in on family farming and ranching, regenerative agriculture, healthy living, and planting seeds in our community. We invite you to listen, subscribe, and grow with the Soil Sisters. I'm Joanna Nuding, joined by my blood, soul, and soil sister, Crystal. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Sissy.
Hello. We have a very special guest today.
Yes,
There's more blood in the room than usual.
I love it.
Butch Nuding, our father, is joining us. We're here at the ranch in the living room, and we are so excited to have this conversation. So thank you for agreeing to join us on the Soil Sisters podcast.
I'm happy to do it.
Well, I love you so much, and I am happy that you're here, and I'm excited to hear what we're about to hear.
I love both of y'all. As a matter of fact, I have 5 girls, and I love them all.
Yes, you do.
Good disclaimer. You know, nobody can have favorites.
No.
So we wanted to invite our father onto the show so that we could talk about the history of the ranch. We are 5th generation, and our father's 4th generation, but he started managing the ranch really 3rd generation.
Yes.
So we want to get into today the history and the origin story of the ranch, and then just hear some, anecdotal stories, some of your favorite moments and interactions that you've had on your long history here at JD Patterson Ranch.
Well, I came here in 1970. I've been coming to the ranch most of my life. When I was growing up, I was born in Stanford, Texas. My mother was the only daughter of JD and Veda Patterson, and she married a military guy and ended up living all over the country and in Europe. But when she got pregnant with me, she wanted me to be the first child born in Ashburmont, Texas at the clinic. And Doc Mansell was the one that delivered me. But she went into labor before the clinic was finished, a week or two before. And so I ended up being born in Stanford, Texas, at the Stanford Sanitarium.
Excellent start.
That explains a lot.
Yes. May explain a lot about your daddy. But anyway, I was spent the first 5 years of my life were started in Alaska, and then my dad got transferred to New Mexico, to Roswell, and so we were able to come to the ranch. Mother was able to bring me to see grandmother and granddaddy. But then my dad got transferred to England, and so we were there for 5 years. And I didn't get to see my grandfather or grandmother for 5 years. My grandfather would not fly, and he would not ride on a boat. So we spent the 5 years in Europe. We came back, I was 10 years old, and came straight to the ranch.
Yeah.
And it's always been my favorite place. I ended up with 3 different high schools. I graduated from high school in Montgomery, Alabama, when George Wallace was governor. A lot of things going on there. Had a college scholarship offer from Alabama for football. But my mother and dad said, no, you're not going to school in the South. not the way things are now. So the coach that was at Alabama ended up taking the job at A&M, and he offered me a scholarship. So I ended up with a scholarship to A&M to play football. So that's how I ended up back up in Texas.
So when you were a kid, I know you spent your summers here. So can you talk a little bit maybe about some of your favorite memories of spending summers at the ranch as a kid?
Oh, it was fun because I got to my grandmother would spoil me and my granddad would abuse me a little bit. He'd take me in there was where the swimming pool is, the water would run out and ran across the lots. Well, he'd bring me out there and he'd grab me by the hands and help me jump over the water. But every once in a while, he'd just turn loose of me and let me fall in the water. He thought that was funny.
Well, I recall being tossed into the horse trough myself.
I was about to say, this is Daddy's origin story.
Well, you do as you learn.
Exactly.
Anyway, I was here in 1952.
And when was the
50s.
ranch? So just for context of that, when was the ranch founded?
The ranch was established in 1887 when Stonewall County was formed. Jefferson Davis Patterson, my great-grandfather, had come from Missouri when he was young, right after the Civil War, and went to San Marcos, and his family were cotton farmers. And they moved, and they were neighbors, and I know I've told you girls this before. They were neighbors of the James brothers, Frank and Jesse. My great-grandfather used to say if they'd had another bunch of those James boys, they'd whip them damn Yankees. So anyway, after the Civil War, they moved to San Marcos, and he stayed down there. And I don't know how old he was. He had to be in his 20s. Decided he wanted to come out and settle in West Texas. So he brought a set of longhorn heifers and drove them up from San Marcos with 2 horses and brought them to Abilene. At that point in time, he ran onto a fella, and the fella traded him a section of land for a horse and a saddle. And so Jefferson Davis traded that man for that. And the man told him, when you get out to this area, there'd be a 40-acre patch of wheat. And that's it, where he'd know we'd arrive. Well, he got out here and he found the 40 acres of wheat, but he also found out that nobody owned the land. The land was still owned by the state of Texas. And so he couldn't claim it because all the land in West Texas was leased to foreign conglomerates by the state.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So he went to work for an outfit called the Two Circle Bar, and their east line was right there by the mailbox at the ranch house. And that was their east line. And they ran cattle all the way back to Spur and back to Snyder.
And this conglomerate, Two Circle Bar, was based out of
England.
Okay.
Foreign-owned conglomerate.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Jefferson Davis went to work for him as an outrider. And that meant that he spent his time with the crews gathering cattle, the ranch's cattle, all the way back to Spur, all the way back to Snyder.
Because there were no fences.
No fences, it's all open. He did that for 7 years. 1887, Stonewall County was formed. And when it was formed, he homesteaded this section right here.
So in that day, how did people begin growing their land and their ranch? Like, how did they go about acquiring more?
They had lots of people come in and settle, but small communities, Swenson, Peacock, Girard, Jayton, were small communities, but there was no industry. And so people came in and settled and started leaving. And as they left, my great grandfather would try and absorb all the land. And then my grandfather was born in 1900, and he grew up here on the ranch. The house that is here on the ranch is the original house that Jefferson Davis built. He and Mitty Lee.
So tell me, in the kitchen where those two windows are, right in front of the sink, was that like the original part?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so the construction on that house began in 1900, or it was finished in 1900?
I was told it was built in 1900, but I think my granddad misspoke. I think it took a couple of years to get it finished.
Mm-hmm. But they started in 1900?
Right.
Okay.
And then he added on to it.
Right.
You know, where that kitchen table or the dining room table is,
mm-hmm.
He added all that. That table was built in that room.
Yes.
Yeah. The thing that's so fascinating about that house is how functional it is. The fact that the guttering system feeds cisterns, the cisterns are in the house. But now that you're saying that, because the two cisterns that are in the dining room area,
he built all those cisterns, and then as time went by, we started having problems with cisterns starting to leak, and we had the one cistern outside, the big one, that's what feeds the ranch house for water. The other cisterns we use buckets to get the water out with.
So the outdoor one is like all the plumbing, and then the other ones for the drinking water.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how that was even possible. Like, how did someone do that? It blows my mind.
It does mine too, like the brilliance of how that.
And back in the day, there was no water.
Yeah.
There was no well water.
Mm-hmm.
That came along after JD started running things.
Well, so the water capture, I mean, it was rainwater capture.
Yes.
So how deep is that cistern?
The cistern there just north of the house, I'd say it's 25 feet deep.
Wow.
I have so many questions. I mean, what? How? Who? I mean, like, they didn't call up an engineer.
They didn't have an excavator.
Right.
No, it was all of them were hand dug.
Wow.
And so was the soil structure, and you may not know the answer to this, but was the soil structure similar to the way it is now?
Yes, exactly.
Because, I mean, thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because where,
Easier there than Caldwell County.
Yeah. Because it's a sandy loam. So at least, which also helps the house structure still remain. So any kind of settling or shifting doesn't have major effects on the foundation of the house.
Exactly.
I never realized houses shifted because I knew the ranch had been there for 100 years and I didn't see any cracks in the wall. And then I buy a house in Caldwell County on our heavy clay soil, and I'm like, what are all these cracks happening in the walls? And it literally was that realization.
Settling.
Yeah, that clay is like cement itself.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, finding time for in real life connection is a challenge in and of itself. So, I talked to Crystal about a modern spin on the classic farmers co-op, and we'd be delighted if you join us. The concept is pretty simple. Give $5, receive support. You donate $5 or more per month and gain access to the Texas Soil Sisters Co-op monthly online meetup. This is a private but open dialogue where you can bring questions and receive support from our growing community. Maybe it's questions about industrial hemp production, or you're looking for land, or maybe a land steward, or connecting with alternative land use opportunities. Maybe you're in the beginning stage of off ramping from conventional ag like we are. We love passing along the powerful education we're receiving and helping other soil sisters and misters like you find solutions. So, if you're a gardener, land steward, farmer, rancher, or limited resource landowner, you're invited to join us on our monthly co op call with your donation. Sign up at txsoilsisters.co/grow. These monthly meetings are not recorded. They take place on the third Monday of every month at 6 p.m. Central Time. Sign up at txsoilsisters.co/grow. So, okay, really amazing things happening in 1900.
Yes.
What was the ranch like then? What stories did you hear?
My grandfather when he was 18, he was in college at Drones Business College in Abilene, and they had planted 3,000 acres of cotton. And he was in business college, and my great-grandfather telegraphed him. There weren't phones back then.
This is
Telegraphed him and told
1918.
him he needed to get home. They had a cotton crop that needed to be harvested, and it was unbelievable. And he told him to get back home and bring all the blacks that he could find that would be willing to work to pick cotton. So Granddaddy came back via railroad. He caught train from Abilene to, I'm assuming, Stanford.
Mm-hmm.
And then my grandfather picked him up with wagons, and my great-grandfather, and picked up all the hands, and they brought them out here. And they spent all that fall harvesting the cotton. Well, they got the cotton harvested and baled. And my great-grandfather had started a town called, I'll think of it in a minute.
Okay.
But he put a town in, and they shipped all that cotton over to the rail station and had it stacked up on to load, because they hauled all the cotton to Houston at that time. And my grandfather begged my great-grandfather. Cotton was worth 75 cents a pound. That when they got it harvested, because they had World War I going on,
Mm-hmm.
and they used a lot of the stuff for fire armament, guns.
Well,
Anyway, they needed the
supplies,
cotton.
things that,
Yeah.
Anyway, it was worth 75 cents a pound. My grandfather begged his daddy, said, "Daddy, let's sell the cotton." He said, "Oh, boy, we've rode it this far. We'll ride it to $1." And they loaded that cotton up on the train, and it left out. It was worth 75 cents a pound. When it got to Houston, the war come to cease. Cotton fell to 2 cents a pound.
ouch.
Wowza. Yeah, little
At
missed
that
opportunity.
point in time, you could buy an acre of land for $1 an acre.
Wow.
So he literally lost a
A
fortune.
fortune. Yeah.
And they were buying land.
Yeah. Wow.
So I want to go back a bit because you said that Jefferson Davis, your great grandfather, had built a town, had started a town. What does that mean then? In that time, what does it mean to start a town? What do you do?
Well, he built a train station. Gosh, I can't remember the name of it.
So you can say it. What? Friona, does that sound?
Friona. I believe that's right. Friona was the name of it. There was 2 towns, Friona and then Peacock. And when he lost that, well, they closed that town up. Peacock became the town.
So basically, to start a town, it needs a train depot. And once there's a train depot, everything else could build up around it.
Exactly.
And so didn't he also, well, first of all, how much land had he acquired at that point?
I do not know how much land that they'd put together. At one point, right after my great-grandfather died, there was probably 30,000 acres in the ranch.
Because it has to be significant if you're the person that's building towns, creating opportunities for other people.
Right.
Because then he also was building and starting banks as well.
He started banks. He built the bank in Peacock, the bank in Swenson, the bank in Aspermont, the bank in Jayton, and the bank in Rotan.
Wow.
So he had 5 banks.
And this was Jefferson Davis, your great-granddaddy.
My great-granddaddy. And then, of course, when he passed, Granddaddy Patterson had to take over the banks.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the favorite stories was one of the banks, I think the bank in Jayton, no, it was a bank in Peacock. There was a rumor going around that the bank was having a problem. And so somebody got a hold of Granddaddy and told him that there was going to be a run on the bank, that people were going to come in. Well, banks don't keep all the cash on hand.
Right.
So he and grandmother got in the car and drove to Amarillo, which was the closest national bank, and got $50,000 in cash at the bank and tried to get back to Peacock by 9 o'clock that morning. Well, the roads weren't very good, and it's a long drive. Granddaddy got sleepy, and he told grandmother, said, "You're going to have to drive us to the bank." He said, "Don't stop for anybody or anything. Just drive." So she drove him from halfway there to the back door of the Peacock Bank. Granddaddy walked into the bank and handed the cash to the tellers. And when the door came open, people were lined up out front, and they coming in. You know, they may not have $5 in the bank, but they're going to take it out. And the tellers would hand them the cash. Everybody's getting their money. And after an hour or so, people thought, well, this bank's okay. So they turned around and started coming back in, giving the money back.
Yeah.
Putting deposits in the money.
They just needed that peace of mind.
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's smart thinking.
Yeah.
On Granddaddy's part.
That's exactly right.
Well, he ended up, bank in Peacock closed down, and the bank in Swenson had the bank in Aspermont, and he got where he didn't like the banking business, didn't want any part of it. Ralph Riddle was one of the people that he had employed. Ralph Riddle decided he wanted to buy the bank, and the Riddles still own the bank in Aspermont now.
So the bank that he built, was that the one right on the corner down from the general store?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's all boarded up now.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the bank in Peacock is right there on the corner.
Yep.
Of course, the other thing that happened to Peacock was Peacock got hit by a tornado and destroyed the entire town. I don't recall what year, 40s sometime, I'm sure.
And you were born in 47.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100 years ago.
Not quite.
Well, and I recall being a teenager and asking you when you thought you would retire. When do you think you want to retire, so that we know when we need to come back and do this together for a few years so that you could teach us the ropes? And I recall back then that you said you wouldn't retire till you were in your 80s.
JD Patterson gave up running the ranch in 1976. I'd been here for 6 years. I turned down a couple of jobs when I graduated from college. First of all, when I was playing football at A&M, I blew a knee out, tore my ACL, and they decided that I needed surgery. I was the sixth one scheduled to have surgery out of 7. And I was watching the guys that had the surgery before me, and they were not getting around very well. And so I went to Coach Stallings and told him, I said, I'm not going to have the knee surgery. Randy Matson, who was a world champion shot putter, had told me, he kept the coaches off of me because I wasn't getting the surgery, told me that Hugh Mamaliga, who was his weight coach, could fix my knee for me. And so I went to Mamaliga and spent that spring working on my knee and got my knee where I could lift 350 pounds with that left knee. So it was good. And I gave up my scholarship. And when I did that, I loaded all my stuff up in my pickup and came back to the ranch and on the weekend and told my granddad, I said, I'm done with college. I'm coming back. I want to go to work for you. And he said, boy, you need to go to college. And made me go back to A&M. I went back and spent 3 more years in college, wasted a bunch of money.
Well, you were probably just wasted.
Probably. But I wasn't interested in a college degree, and I didn't think it helped me. But my grandfather thought I needed it, so that's why I ended up in college.
Well, and you got your degree in?
Marketing.
Really? You didn't get an ag degree?
No. I had too much science to do in all the other fields.
Well, and I think they were selling propaganda already.
Well, by that time they were
school.
starting the chemical stuff. So then it's more chemistry than actual ag.
Yeah, and you had to take biology, and I took biology and barely got out of that thing. I hated science.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Well, I love it, but at Midwestern, I was getting my degree in communications and broadcasting, and I tried to take a biology class in the summer. And after the very first day, I dropped that class. You got to be kidding me. I'm not doing this. So, yeah, I took the geology classes. I only needed 2 sciences with an arts degree. So I got out pretty easy.
Well, I got out of biology 1 and 2 with D's, gifted D's.
I believe that.
I hated it. But I got my degree in marketing, and that's why I got some good job offers. I had a fairly decent personality back then. So
What?
And so I turned down 2 $1,500 jobs.
Wow.
In College Station. 2 different
$1,500 a month?
$1,500 a month.
Wow.
Came to work for my grandfather for $300 a month. But I got a house.
I was about to say.
The one we're sitting in now. Although then this room that we're in wasn't here, right?
No.
I didn't think so.
No, the house that we were in, where the dining room is, my office is, the kitchen, and the bedroom. And then they had added on a bathroom back there. And that was a cistern room.
So you begrudgingly finished college and you moved back to work with Granddaddy. What are some of the early memories you have about that generational working together You had told me that in the beginning, Granddaddy had 3 employees that their job was driving tractors.
He was farming 2,700 acres of land. He had 3 employees, Bill Ross, Deb Nail, and Bill Nail, 2 brothers. And then he had another employee named Mac. And the 3 older gentlemen farm. That's all they did, was drive tractors. He'd make up a lunch for them every day, hand each one of them a box with beans and different stuff so they could heat up and eat their meal, sit down and eat a hot meal, and then go back to plowing. It would take them, if they got 4 acres of land plowed in a day, they got a lot done.
Wow.
I can't
2,700 acres at 4 acres a day.
Yeah.
That is a yearly,
Yes.
Yeah.
year-round job.
Then
And they were-
McDonald was a multi-purpose employee.
Mm-hmm.
Granddaddy had a cowboy hired that was living at the North Camp, and he fired him to hire me. And my job was to ride horses, break horses, and prowl, and just look through the cattle, and then be here to help cowboy and brand and do everything that we needed to do.
What was the size of the ranch then?
Ooh, back then it was around 28 to 30,000 acres.
And so the 2,700 acres that were being farmed, what was it?
It was scattered all over. He quit farming cotton. He put some of it in Johnson grass to plow, just so for grazing. And then we'd plant wheat and plant hay grazer.
Do you know what kind of wheat, the variety?
Yeah, but I can't remember.
Okay. We'll let that bubble up because I'm interested in what variety he was planting.
It wasn't beardless. It was regular wheat.
Hard red, hard white? Because I heard
Hard red winter wheat.
Okay, a hard red. Because that's what one of the things that we had heard talking to Cherry in Aspermont. She was saying this land, this environment, the hard wheats are typically what people grow.
Hard red winter wheat's what it was.
Well, and that's what we're looking at right now for our 30-acre plot. The one we're leaning towards is we're looking at ancient grains. And so the Mediterranean is a hard red wheat, and it was predominantly grown in Texas in 1919. So I'm curious if potentially it is the Mediterranean variety, which would be really cool.
Yeah.
But the other thing, that to plant a grain in sandy loam, the better performing is oats.
Okay.
We planted oats a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Cattle do well on it,
Mm-hmm.
and you can harvest it or you can bale it. Makes good hay.
Excellent.
So working with Granddaddy Patterson, do you have a favorite story or experience that you kind of hold with you?
JD Patterson was a hard man. He grew up hard and he never got over it. I can remember when we were working cattle, the day we'd start, he'd get out of bed and be mad, be in a bad mood, and he did not get out of that mood until we were done. That may take 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And he was just hard on people. And I could, didn't matter how well I thought I did my job, it wasn't good enough for him. I remember we were nearly done. I was putting my saddle in the barn, and Granddaddy was kind of in my face about something that I'd done wrong working cattle. I said, Granddaddy, I'm learning. Teach me. Don't hate me, because I love you. And I looked at him, and he kind of got a tear look in his eye. First time I'd ever seen him do that. But I was his favorite.
So whenever you saw him get tears in his eyes, did he respond? Did he say anything back to you, or he just showed you he actually had some emotions in there?
No, he wouldn't do that. He wouldn't expose himself to that. He was a hard man, and he lived through hard times, and he dealt with it everywhere he could. And I mean, when they closed the school in Peacock, he was on the school board, and he voted to close it. And he and my great-grandfather had built the Baptist church in Peacock and also the parsonage. When he got the school closed, because he was paying 90% of the taxes on the school, and they had one senior, and Granddaddy said, no, we're going to close it. And he closed the school, and people of Peacock were mad at him, and they kicked him out of the church, out of the Peacock Baptist Church. He ended up going to church in Ash, Vermont, and finally ended up joining the Baptist church there in Jake.
Didn't he build that church too?
He and C.C. York rebuilt it, and that big circular deal in the front of that church, C.C. York insisted on building that.
I'll have to drive back by there. It's been a lot of years since I've been there.
Yeah.
So when you say that Granddaddy Patterson had a hard life, which of course, everybody during that time did, but Jefferson Davis, his father, was he a hard man? Did you know him? Was he?
I never got to meet him. I wasn't born until 47, and I don't even know what year he died. We'd have to look at the cemetery. Now I knew Grandmother Mitt, his wife.
Mm-hmm.
Grandmother Mitt lived down on the south end where Jeff Nash, she helped raise Jeff Nash. That was my granddad's nephew. Jeff Nash's mother burned to death when he was 4 or 5 years old. And grandmother and granddaddy helped raise Jeff Nash along with my mother, JD.
And she passed away, is that who her hair caught on fire? Is that
Yes.
okay?
She was painting in front of the fireplace in the ranch house.
Yes.
Yeah. From knowing that story and having really long hair, I constantly am paranoid that I'm going to catch my hair on fire.
Well, she had long hair, and back in the day, all we had was wood-burning stoves. And she had long hair, and she was in her nightgown, and evidently she turned to do something, and her hair caught on fire, and her gown caught on fire, and she burned to death.
She was running to Granddaddy. Grandma, or maybe it was Lynn, said that she was trying to get to Granddaddy for him to help her.
May have been. I don't remember.
Yeah.
And also just from the pictures, and to paint a picture for you listening, this is like Crystal Gale long hair. Like this is long hair that is almost to the ground long.
Yeah.
And we didn't have the stop, drop, and roll PSAs back then.
We didn't know.
I mean, wow. Well, and you recently had your own little fire scare.
Yeah, a little bit.
Out in the country, you have barrels that you throw your trash in and burn it, and something highly flammable came and
Blew
bit
up.
you in the face.
Hit me in the face, caught my shirt on fire.
Ranch life, people. These things happen.
Yeah.
So I have a question going back to Granddaddy Patterson being mad when he got up to work cattle and not being happy until it was done. I mean, he was a cowboy. He was a ranchman. Is that not what he wanted? Why was he so upset? And why was he mad?
It was attitude. I'm assuming, when you're going to work cattle and you're having to work with cowboys, things don't always go smoothly.
Right.
And he was just on edge.
Yeah.
And, I understand that. I kind of get a little edgy myself, used to.
Well, and safety for the cowboys and things that could happen and sometimes do.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of wrecks to happen.
Yes.
Well, and yeah, I'm like, look, you could have been a banker. Like,
Exactly. You really
You chose
you
this.
chose it.
Yeah.
That's my
I
point.
did. I chose this life.
well, not you, but yes, you too. We all have to make that decision, which I am curious too, because it's, the stresses of the operation. And then you think of the stresses of succession planning,
Yes.
of like teaching the people what they need to know so that the operation can continue. So, you were telling him, like, don't be mad at me, teach me. So did you find that the longer you were here, that you were just, I'm going to digress for a second. So in the last podcast we recorded with our friend Aaron Owens, he's talking about growing up in West Texas. And he said, the West Texas way is just, you take the kids and you're just like, do it. Just go do that thing. And you don't have any training. You just get on the horse and go do what you're told to do, and you figure it out as you go. So did you find that with Granddaddy, when you're like, teach me, did you find that your relationship changed a bit and he started teaching you more?
Actually, no. 1976, he started developing Alzheimer's and got where he couldn't do the management. And he started having me do it for him. And I ended up having to start paying the bills and making the deals. When he passed away in 1981, I was total management of the ranch. He borrowed money occasionally. We never had any debt. And when he passed away, two things happened. One, on his passing, I ended up having to borrow over $500,000 to pay inheritance tax on the land that mother received. In 1981, the oil income on the ranch was $85,000 a year. That was the year he died. In 1982, we lost most of the oil income, and we were down to $5,000 or $6,000 a year in oil income. Not much leasing going on, and I'm looking at having to pay back $500,000 to the feds for inheritance tax.
Criminal.
So
It is criminal.
we, until 1982, the ranch was fairly self-sufficient.
Due to the oil money.
Due to the oil money and income, and, the expenses weren't extremely high.
Yeah.
And also, the ranch has always been a breeder of Hereford cattle, right? Or when did that become kind
My
of the
great-grandfather
signature?
came out with
The Longhorns.
Longhorns, and Granddaddy moved to Hereford cattle, and we ran Hereford cattle for years. I told you that when I came to work on the ranch, there's a 3 or 4 ton truck, and if I had to take a heifer to the vet, I had to load her on the truck.
Mm-hmm.
And if we went to Ashburmont to work cattle, we'd trot from here to Ashburmont to work cattle
Oh my gosh.
and then trot back.
Mm-hmm.
That was what, 20 miles to the Aspermont place?
As a crow flies, probably 10.
That you could trot. So you trotted 10
Trotted,
miles.
yes.
Okay.
And so whenever you say you had to, heifer had to go to the vet and you had to load him up on that truck, this is an actual truck
Like
up
in the
off
back
the
of the
ground. You
truck.
have to add the cattle panels.
Bobtail truck that we had beds for. It had a dump bed on it, but it had cattle panels. It had a box on it, and then we added cattle panels up the side of it. And that way it'd be, you could put a horse in it and you could haul cattle with it. And then if you needed to haul grain, well, you take the cattle panels off, put the grain in there, and bring it to the ranch and dump it in the auger. And, and you've seen those feeders, those big feeders out there that,
And then you had to shovel it
I had to shovel it.
in there. Well, and what's so funny is thinking, oh, there's a 30,000 acre ranch that doesn't have a trailer.
Yeah.
Like, that sounds insane.
Yeah.
Well, in 1976, 77, I told my granddad I bought a pickup, a half-ton pickup. I said, we've got to buy a trailer. And he said, what for? And I said, well, the vet, and I can't think of his name. I've known him all my life, but he took out his cattle chute. So I couldn't pull up there with a truck and unload an animal because they'd had to jump off 4 feet.
Oh, Lord. Yeah.
So that's the reason I got Granddaddy to buy a trailer.
Yeah.
He bought a 12-foot bumper pull trailer. And over the years I've progressed to gooseneck trailers, and
Like a 16-foot.
it changed. A lot of things had to change, and everybody modernized, and we were a little slower than most, but I got him convinced that we needed to do some different things. And then when he passed, and of course I was losing hands, Bill Nail, Deb Nail, and Bill Ross, they were in their 60s when I came out here, and all of a sudden they started quitting. Granddaddy wanted me to start doing the farming. Butch hates nothing worse than a tractor.
I know that's right.
But so then we had to start investing in bigger equipment, buying bigger tractors. Back when Granddaddy was plowing, we had 12-foot plows. The last grain drill that I have is a 45-foot plow.
Wow. Yeah.
I could cover 250 acres in a day.
Yeah. So when y'all didn't have a trailer, how many cattle were you running?
600.
Jeez.
I can't even imagine.
That blows my mind.
Granddaddy, at one time, we had 800 mother cows.
And how many bulls would you have for that?
I'm sorry?
How many bulls?
We had a bull per 15 cows.
Wow. And they were all Hereford bulls that Granddaddy
Yes.
had.
And we take the bulls off the cows and put them in a pasture and keep them separated, as we didn't want to calve year round.
Right.
And then we dropped down to, I think 400 mother cows. I got to noticing that people were wanting crossbred heifers, that they'd pay a premium for them. So I ended up buying some JD Hudgens Brahman bulls and started breeding half our cows to Brahman bulls so that we could develop the F1 heifers, which helped us keep us in business, helped service our debt. And of course, then grandmother died. When grandmother died, we had another $250,000, $300,000 tax bill.
Inheritance.
And so the whole time we were operating on borrowed money.
Yeah.
You know, and that is such a crucial part now, is to make sure that there is a trust structure developed, you know, and that's something that very wealthy people operate their business, their home, everything out of a trust. And, you know, there's a way to manipulate the system to where you can avoid this kind of stuff. Because, I mean, I think this is the problem for most family farms and ranches, is that the fine print, the government trying to get their share.
I wouldn't even say the government. I would say the IRS, the Federal Reserve.
I know, but
that's not the government.
Well,
inheritance tax is 49%.
That's
of the
crazy.
value of the land.
it's insane.
Well, and so these millionaires, people who have a ton of money, who have the knowledge of and the money to put the systems in place that keep them from having to pay that. And it's the small farmer and the small rancher who are affected most by that. And they are the most important because collectively, you know, regionally, locally, like keeping the money in the area and feeding the people and feeding our community. Like that's what's most important. And that is what these larger corporations who are buying up all these little smaller farms and ranches, they don't care about the people. They don't care about the community. They don't have family. There's no history. This ranch has been in our family for over 100 years. And it is very, very important to me and to all of us in the family. And that's where big things need to change.
We ended up, because finding good attorneys, we got Bennett Cook out of Lubbock to help draw up mother and daddy's wills and put everything in a trust so that when mother died, Doug, Frank, and I inherited our thirds of the ranch without any inheritance tax. That at that time was $20 million worth of land.
Yeah. Well, I'd say y'all had paid enough.
Yeah. Oh, I don't disagree, but we ended up receiving the land in trust.
Yeah.
And it's being handed down to our children in trust. So,
and each person needs to have a trust.
Yeah.
Like the trust needs to be in umbrellas. Because then once you get it, you know, it's handed over in a trust. But then if you take that money and you just put it in a bank account and do something with it, then you're then exposed again.
No, you
to all the taxes.
It's passed to you in a trust. It comes, you know, I've got 2 trusts. Linda and I have a trust, and I have my personal trust.
Right. So a person, but that's what I mean. So like having a personal trust, because.
And that's the way it's being passed down to you girls. All y'all will have your own trust. But that's where it gets complicated, because there's 5 of y'all, 3 of Doug's, 2 of Frank's, and all of them own the percentage. You know, Frank's stuff is his third of the ranch divided into 2. Doug's is divided into 3. Ours is divided into 5. So that's the way it's going to. So then that turns into how, you know, I envision that y'all will share in the income of the family.
Well, and
somebody's got to create it first.
Exactly. So
That's what we're trying to do.
This is what Crystal and I are doing.
Because it doesn't matter what those
you're
other
have
thirds.
To be able to do is be able to lease.
Well, that's
one way.
Yeah, because here's the thing that drives me insane about family farming and ranching. Why it is not treated and cared for like a business.
Exactly.
Just like like a family who's, you know, they own a construction company. it's not like, okay, well, when you go, when I die, you're going to get the cement business and you're going to get the house business and you're going to get the commercial construction business. It's like, this is a business.
Yeah.
Farming and ranching, it's not land.
Yeah.
It's treating it as a business. And so instead of taking 30,000 acres and then it's 10,000 acres for each person, and then those 10,000 acres, like, things get splintered to the point of them not having the same value, because a collective, just like a family, we are stronger as a unit
Together.
And I know I have been preaching this for 12 years at least, of let's stop dividing it and just build on what we have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is one unit. How do we get anybody that wants to participate involved, but just treat this like a business and grow it so that we create generational wealth without splintering any more land?
Well, none of the land is splintered.
If the way it's set up now, and I'm not saying it's our family, but I'm saying in general, someone can say, well, I'm going to take my 2,000 acres and I live really far away and I don't want to have to deal with it anymore and my kids aren't interested. So we're just going to sell our part.
Or give us the money.
Well,
That happens a lot
it's
with
not
people.
set up that way. No, one person can't say, "Oh, I want my 1/10."
Yeah.
But I hear that all the time. Crystal and I went to Regen Ag School.
Nobody can go in there and say, "Oh, I want my 10th."
Perfect.
It's set up that the trust ownership is of the entire property. There's 4,900 acres left, so this 490 acres is yours. It's all one tract, and so the
Percentage
ability
ownership
is, if y'all as partners decide that you want to operate the family operation, what happens is that, for instance, the deer, quail,
The
that
hunting.
income from leasing the land. So say that we get the hunting leases done at $100,000 a year. And then you turn around and you've got grazing is another 30,000. Well, that's $130,000 of income
Minus operational expenses.
minus operational expenses. But if y'all decided that y'all wanted to lease the land,
Us, as in Texas Soil Sisters, wanted to lease the land.
Yes.
Yeah, we would lease it from the family.
Well, you'd be
Yes.
Right.
But the Patterson family is 10 entities. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I do. The way I think about it in a business brain is there's the operation, and each enterprise has its own expenses. So the hunting has its expenses, the farming has its expenses, the livestock, and whatever revenue is generated minus those operational costs. This is what the business as a whole made. This is what each enterprise made. And then that money just goes back into the business to continue its operation. So it's not like at the end of every year, everybody's getting cut a check. It's just, this is the operation and this is how it's going. Now, if someone is like, oh, here's an idea for an enterprise and I want to run that enterprise, then come on, you want to do chickens or you want to have sheep or something else, then it's still the business. But now there's a family member that's like, I want to run this enterprise, while someone else, like maybe one of Doug's kids, because they're the more hunting enthusiasts of all of us, maybe they want to run the hunting enterprise. But it's not like at the end of each year, whatever profits are there, everybody's dividing it up, because then you have no money to run your
That's
business.
right. You got to put it back in the business.
So, for me, it's like, okay, if you're running an enterprise, then, you build in. So say me, for example, I have over 20 years of experience of experiential marketing and hosting events and putting things together. So say we wanted to do some region ag schools for this area to teach West Texas farmers and ranchers who are interested in transitioning from commercial ag into regenerative ag. And so we host a school here, and we have class up at the ranch house. It's a day school. Everybody's paid $1,000 to show up and do this. I'm just trying to make a nice round number. So for that, say I want to make, because I'm putting it together and doing the work, well, I'm going to make $200 per head of the students that come. The other $800 we're feeding them. I got to hire somebody to clean up the house or whatever. So our profit on that, after I'm paid, after the operational costs of hosting the event are paid, there's $450 of profit left. That goes to the ranch. Yeah. Like that goes into the business. So that, in my mind, is how that works. Mm-hmm. Like whoever wants to get involved in whatever enterprise feels good to them, you build in their own profit. Yeah, their payment for being involved.
Right.
But
bringing the business to the ranch that wouldn't have been there before. So, but then the ranch profits ultimately from that.
Because for me...
Right. But when Linda and I pass, y'all will receive pretty good amount of cash. Each one of our children is going to receive a good bit of cash.
Well, we're not looking forward to that anytime soon.
I know that, but that's all I'm saying is that it's not like this is going to go away. It's y'all will have cash and still be able to operate however.
Well, yes, but me receiving cash personally, we say we all receive cash. Well, if Crystal and I are invested in the ranch, everybody else can just go do whatever they want with their cash. But we're like, well, we want to put ours back into the business, but it's a family business. So for me, the cash is something totally separate. It's what monies are in the farm and ranch, like the JD Patterson Ranch thing, because I want to keep an operation going. I want to create generational wealth
for all of our family.
It's not about me or her or them or whatever. So the cash is, to me, that's done as something separate that has nothing to do with the ranch.
Yeah.
Well, but it's still 10 people, and the ranch is going to be operated, whether I go first, Doug goes, Frank goes, however it ends up. When I pass, my third of the family land is going to go to each one of my children in trust.
But there is a clause that says you can't sell that land?
Yes.
Good.
Okay. Yeah.
Good.
No,
because
you can't sell the land.
That's what I'm like, we can't have the land broken up any further.
No, nobody can sell the land.
And that's what I think is such a challenge with families figuring out and doing succession planning and implementing change that everyone is on board with. And of course, for me, I've been lobbying for over a decade for us to have an annual family meeting, because it's just good for people to understand this is how this works. Mm-hmm. This is how we make money. This is what we do. Do you need to have a bathroom break real quick?
Nicole, that picture on the right underneath the JD sign, that's my granddad. That's me on the little horse.
This one?
Yeah,
that one right there.
I love the color of it. It's beautiful. You should make it like a big poster.
So you said that's you and Granddaddy and who else?
I think Hap Hill, and maybe
Wait, Papa?
That's Papa.
Hap Hill is my papa.
not Hap. One of his cousins or his brothers.
Which one?
I'll have to look.
Yeah.
He is. He
recorded
worked out
on there.
here. I'm terrible with names. Anyway, there's a story, that barn right behind there, that was a 2-story building. I think there's a picture of it that in the other room that Chris or Melody did.
Oh, that she painted?
Painted the barn in the 70s. Granddaddy decided he wanted to take the top half of that barn, which was a 2-story barn that we stored hay in. And then we had feed area and place for plow parts and what have you. And then we had 3 feed sheds down there. And that's also where we stored our saddles. Granddaddy decided we were going to tear that down, and he had Frank and Doug and I tearing the roof off of that barn. You remember what it looked like?
Pretty steep pitch.
Real steep. We had to take all the tin off, and we had that flat roof. We had electricity to that barn, and instead of turning the electricity off, he just pulled the wires down, turned them upside down. We were in the ranch house eating, and Lynn stepped out and hollered, and the barn was on fire. We'd had a wind come and blowing, and it started whipping those wires around, and they sparked and set fire to that hay that was on the ground and burned that barn to the ground. I had to go running out there and throw open that gate goes into the horse lot to let my horses out. I had 5 or 6 horses in there, and they were going crazy.
Yeah.
I had to get them out of there, and I guess Lynn called the fire department, Ashburn Fire Department, and Jayton Fire Department came out. It destroyed the whole thing, burned it to the ground.
What would a fire department from Jayton or Aspermont come drive out here to the ranch? Where would they hook up to water? Like, how would
They
they?
bring their fire trucks with water.
Okay. I guess that's why she'd call both. Because my idea, like, now we hook up to hydrants
No, all they have is fire trucks with water,
with water
in
in them. Okay.
There's no
That
water
makes sense.
available.
Mm-hmm.
So, what do you do in that situation to mitigate things as much as possible while you're waiting for an area, fire department to show up? Was it okay because it was in the lots and there was nothing else around it?
Exactly. And it just didn't set any other fires off.
That just goes to show you can't just willy-nilly things. You need to have
Yeah.
a plan. Man.
And some little plastic caps, or turn off the electricity. Just
Yeah.
there's
No,
a few.
just turn the electricity off.
Exactly.
Yeah, please, next time.
Good idea.
Hope we all learned our
Lesson
lesson.
learned.
So we've talked a lot about Granddaddy and, the ranching part of things, but Grandmother Patterson, our great grandmother, Veda Lee, she was such an integral part of the ranch and everyone's lives here. She is a very magical woman, an artist,
Musician.
yeah,
singer.
remember, hearing that she was playing the piano by ear as a 5-year-old, and dang near every picture in the ranch was painted by her, and anything she could get her hands on to paint other than that. So any lamp or serving platter or anything in that house was painted by grandmother. And Linda reminded us when you were on your bathroom break that she also painted the murals that are behind the pulpit in the Baptist church in both Peacock and Jayton. So talk a little bit about some of your favorite memories of Grandmother Patterson.
Y'all remember there's a pair of boots sitting in that case. A pair of boots that I had on when we was fixing to leave for England. And I had to take the boots off, give them to grandmother. I took my boots off and my socks off, and she took those, put the socks in the boots and put my spinning top and put that in there. And she held on to that. She gave those to me.
Here, keep the pair together. You can show them to Nicole.
She held on to those for forever.
So why did you have to take them off before you went to England? You weren't allowed to be a cowboy in England?
No, those were my ranch boots.
Oh,
So sweet. They're so cute.
your little dirty socks, Daddy.
I mean, you wore those boots out.
I'm telling you, that is the cutest thing I've ever seen. Oh my gosh, and there's poop on the bottom. I mean, really, they're worn out. Well, and kids grow so fast. I mean, the fact that you wore these boots out in the amount of time that you could fit them says a lot. And they're so cute.
Anyway, that was...
she was sentimental, I'll tell you that.
But grandmother spoiled me rotten. Yeah. Was a great cook. She was the light of my life.
What was your favorite thing that she cooked?
Oh, Lord. Probably the chicken and dumplings.
Well, the next time I come down, I'm going to make y'all chicken and dumplings. Because I make chicken and dumplings just like grandmother.
This is a true story. When Crystal asks me, of course, this was back when I was not living in Texas, and I'd be coming for a visit, she would say, okay, what are you going to want me to cook? And I'm like, chicken and dumplings.
That's what Quentin always wanted.
And of course, she makes them from scratch. It's not like she takes biscuits and rolls them out. It's the real deal.
That's right.
I always loved when, I just call it Veda cake now, but when she would make whatever her cake was, she would just whip it up and never used a recipe. And of course, I also recall her giving us free will to do whatever we wanted in the kitchen as well. She'd be in the other room, and Buffy and I were going to make peanut brittle one day. And I've done this multiple times in my life, but mixing up the baking soda and the baking powder, I accidentally put baking soda when I was supposed to put the other. And this hot candy just boils right up over the pot, all over the stove, and hardened.
Oh, gosh.
And so her entire stovetop was just covered in hard candy. And I was panicking, trying to scrape it off. And she just came in there and laughed. And it's like, we'll get it off. No big deal. And so, yeah, when everybody else was really hard, she was always sweet and soft.
She was. She was sweet.
I was telling Nicole yesterday that middle bedroom, Lynn's bedroom, the windows were already always up, and we would run through that house like a herd of cattle. And she never yelled at us. She never told us to slow down. She never told us, don't break that. I remember how many little dried turtle shells that she would find. She would find stuff like that and save them for us so that we could look at them and check them out and then go see what we could find for ourselves. She was so fun.
She was a sweetheart.
And Granddaddy loved her long hair and never wanted her to cut it. So you see all these pictures of her with this, short little do, but it was a wig, and underneath it was this long gray hair. We were telling Nicole yesterday about sitting on the back of the couch and combing her hair until it would get really staticky and be standing out, and she'd take her teeth out and chase us around the house like she was a witch.
That nobody believed.
It was fun. She would play the character.
But I also remember even the last time that I saw her hair down, it was pretty black. There was gray in it, but even in her older age, her hair was dark underneath that wig.
But yeah, you don't have to chop your hair off when you get old.
No.
No, I haven't chopped mine off.
No, your hair still looks good too. We've got good hair genes.
That's right.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Okay, so before our little intermission, we were talking about figuring out how to run a ranch, a family farming and ranching operation as a business. And I think one of the most important pieces of that is the transparency and the bringing multiple generations together to have the conversations. That way you're planting the seeds so that people know what we're going to sow.
Yeah. Generally, this is what we're doing.
And whenever I was at the Acres USA conference, Joel Salatin was talking about him and his father when they sat down together to decide, what does a successful operation look like? And what they decided was that a successful family operation to them was that there were always 2 generations working together, and that there was enough happening that you could have 2 salaries. Like you could pay 2 people to run the operation, and preferably it being 2 generations. That way there's always a knowledge transfer. There's always somebody who is learning, and there's always someone who's teaching, so that you can continue to pass it on and pay it forward. Because that, I think, is such a huge piece, is understanding the land.
Yeah.
You know, it's one thing to know how to run a business. It's another thing to know how to farm or ranch. But to really understand the land and the history of it and where it's been and where it was successful and why, or where it broke down and why, you know, that kind of stuff, you can't learn it. It has to be passed on.
It's wisdom.
And just like with Native American cultures, there's always the medicine man. There's always the one person who understands, and it's an oral history. And so, you know, it's the same way with Texas farms, ranches, or any farms and ranches. It is that oral history that has to be passed down.
Yeah.
And, you know, just like recording this podcast, I know there's been times over the years where, you know, you've gone through the ranch house, and I think maybe Linda recorded the video, but talking about all of these things. And, you know, for me, I think one of the most important things that we all need to know, everybody in our family, I feel like we might need to have like a family meeting, is how does that house work?
Yeah.
How do you get up and take care of the guts of the operation, you know, the electrical and the foundation and the cisterns, because it is a museum.
Yeah, it is.
That house is, I mean, it is a recognized historical site.
Exactly. And there's a couple of things about the ranch house. I don't want any of the inside presented to the outside. I don't want a video of the ranch, the contents and of the inside of the ranch house in public. I don't want to have to kill anybody coming out here.
Okay.
And that's something.
And
that
we're
would happen.
armed out here, folks. So just
And if you
No,
do,
but
we
I'm
already
serious.
know they have to fall inside the house.
that's right. So enter at your own risk. You've been warned.
But Linda, didn't you do a video with Beta?
It was her birthday, and we got, I think, 3/4 of the way through the house.
You still have that video, don't you? Y'all need to see that.
I would love to
I would
see
love to see
grandmother's
that.
face on a video. I think about her sweet voice all the time.
She was an angel.
Well, so one of our visions is to take this plot that's between our house and the ranch house, because when we were kids, we just run straight through that field.
Yeah.
And now it's grown up, but to clean all of that up and create a walking path again. Because I remember we would be outside playing, and then all of a sudden you could just hear grandmother banging on that organ and singing. And so we would just run up there and go hang out at the organ with her.
Yeah.
and, sing with her.
That was my trail.
Yes.
You started it. Well, we want to bring it back.
That's how I went to work every morning.
I love it.
I'd leave at 6 o'clock, walk up there, and Granddaddy'd cook me breakfast. We'd eat breakfast. And we'd go out to the barn and sit out the barn, and we'd have to play dominoes for an hour, hour and a half.
That's my kind of morning.
Dominoes. And
There's something to be said about having a slow morning.
Yes.
Is that how he got his mind right every day? Playing dominoes?
He enjoyed his dominoes. He enjoyed playing.
Would he play for money or just for fun?
No, he didn't gamble.
Well, is there anything that you want to share, something we didn't ask you that comes to mind?
We changed up operations and went to the crossbred cattle and ended up going to Fort Worth. We started out in Fort Worth in commercial female sale. That was bringing 10 head to Fort Worth. And when I got into the F1 business, we started going to Fort Worth, San Antonio, Houston,
Denver,
and Sealy down for the F1 sales. And we became pretty famous for our F1 cattle. One thing that I insisted on when we were breeding cattle, that we used Hereford bulls with high maternal values, and that way our cattle were probably some of the best uddered Hereford cattle. As people started getting into growth, they started getting out of the maternal side into the growth side.
So they just wanted big.
They wanted this bigger stature.
Yeah, what they ended up doing is breeding out the milk and the cows. Our weaning weights were always in the top 5% cattle, and our genetic, our growth, everything that we did in our cattle, we were at the top of the list.
Well, pause real quick. So if you're saying genetically you wanted to focus on the maternal aspects because if you have a healthy mama, you're going to have healthier babies. When these other folks are starting to focus on the stature of the animal because they'll weigh more, they'll make more money, but that probably caused problems with birthing.
Yeah.
Right. And also our yields, our average yields is 10% higher than most breeds.
And what does that mean?
When you have 1,000-pound animal that you're harvesting, most people's would dress out at 50 to 55%. Ours dress out 65 to 66%.
Okay. And then what are your thoughts on, some of the people that we're working with at FARFA, Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance, advocating for farmers and ranchers to be able to slaughter their own animals, make direct-to-consumer stuff easier?
I do that. We've got 4 beeves on feed right now. One guy's been buying from us for, 3 or 4 years. Chris has over at Haskell, does kills. And one thing that he will do that nobody else will do is I'm a believer in hanging a beef for 30 days. Make sure that it's tender. So he'll hang them for 30 days. Nobody else will.
Yeah.
We've heard that. In fact, I believe Michael Klein said that 28 days was the max that they could get it, their processor. But he was saying the max that they would hang it was 28 days because they needed to get stuff out. They don't have the luxury of aging it longer.
That's one of the problems that we've run into in the beef industry is that we've got people that are killing 2,000-3,000 head a day. And from the time they cut their heads off to the time they're packaged and out the door is 3 days.
Wow. Yeah.
So there's no way to tenderize that meat. Hanging that meat is what helps. First breeding and marbling is number one, but two is the time
Process.
that they hang. But they've gotten it so that they have to move it out so fast. They don't have enough the amount of storage that it would take. 3,000 animals a day, would cover the size of Lubbock cooler.
Well, and it's not about the quality of the meat anymore.
No.
It's about maximizing profits. I mean, the industry suffers because of it, and the commodities market, ranchers are a victim of the commodities market. And to me, the answer is direct to consumer.
Yeah.
Just cutting all of that out.
Well, in all markets, the consumer is the victim of the commodity market.
Yes.
Because the consumer is not in concern at all. It is the money that whoever is making, that's the concern. So, yeah, we gotta shift that.
What are your thoughts on, well, let me back up. So you and Doug recently sold the herd.
Yes.
And when we are considering putting animals back on the land, what are your thoughts when we say things like, oh, we think sheep and cattle need to be running together?
As long as he doesn't have to do it.
Well,
I know that some people make it work. I'm not sure that this ranch is set up to handle the sheep and goats. Not that they can't do well. It's the fact that the varmints out here are extremely dangerous, and they can wipe out a herd of goats and a herd of sheep, even with the tracking devices on them and the dogs. Mountain lion will eat that dog in a heartbeat. We do have mountain lions.
well,
We do have
coyotes, mountain lions. What about the wild boar? Do they mess with them?
I don't know that the wild hogs would actually do any damage to them. What the wild hogs do is damage to the turf.
And the fences.
Fencing.
Well, we're going to have to talk more with some of our West Texas folks, because the further west you go, it's not like you're having fewer mountain lions and coyotes.
No.
So then we know people that are successfully running these things. We just need to know what they do on their operation.
Right.
Because running multiple species together also helps with the health of these animals.
Right.
So
Cattle are grazing and the goats and sheep are browsing. So they're eating different stuff that all stimulates.
The goats and the sheep utilize what a cow wants.
Exactly.
and then with the things that bother them, the different parasites and things like that aren't the same. So if your cattle got worms, it wouldn't affect your sheep or your goats and vice versa. You know, these are things that we want to explore. And much like you with Granddaddy Patterson, making suggestions of how to do things differently.
Well, and going all the way back to Granddaddy Patterson begging Jefferson Davis to sell that cotton for 75 cents. So this is the beginning of understanding that there are always different choices to be made, or that can be made, that could potentially be successful, when maybe one person is like, oh, we're going to ride it to $1, baby, and then you get it for 2 cents. So that's always my thought. And just like you shifting up from doing just the Hereford bulls to the Bremer. So making moves.
Well, I want to close out because we've got a Hickman's buffet waiting for us for lunch.
No.
Is it? Oh, yeah, Saturdays they don't do
no.
buffet.
Oh, well, great. We get to order off the menu.
So what is your hope for the future of JD Patterson Ranch?
I hope it's active from now on, that everybody can share in the land and share in the experience and the history. Some of you, if you and Crystal want to operate the ranch and lease it, then more power to you. Take care of it like it's been taken care of. It's never been abused.
The people have been abused, but the
The land and the
yeah.
cattle are all right.
Well, you think about it. When I started doing the hunting, we went from running 500 mother cows to 200 mother cows, that we were able to generate enough income to pay the expenses using less cattle because we brought in more income from the hunting. So there's a combination of things that you can do to make the ranch work. It doesn't have to be strictly cattle. It doesn't have to be strictly hunting. It can be a conglomeration of stuff that that you come up with to operate it. It's just right now our lease to the gentleman is $35 per head per month. Also, in that lease, there's only 94 head that can be run on the 5,000 acres.
Well, but see, and I disagree with that stock density.
Depending upon how you're running them and the time that you're spending. Like amp grazing would be, I mean, as traditionally grazed, that is a good number. But if you are doing it in the way that we're learning about the adjusted multi-paddock grazing, then you can up that stock density and even build your soil and your land with that. But it has to be done responsibly. They have to be moved and also allow the land to rest in between the grazings.
And I don't disagree, but the problem that you run into out here, one is water, 2 is fencing, 3 is terrain. You can't run paddocks in 7 Diamond L. And if you go into 7 Diamond L and drive through there, you'll notice I've cut paddocks. I've trimmed areas of brush all the way across so that we'd have areas for cover and areas for open.
Right.
But that's a labor intensive, and fencing costs $8,000 a mile.
Well, and like I was telling you yesterday, now with these Bluetooth collars that allow you to have no fence operations, there are programs for ranchers to experiment with that and have subsidies, or that's not a good word for it, with like through NRCS.
Programs where they help you pay for it or pay for part.
Yeah, there's incentives to try this new thing. And I believe that especially with older farmers or ranchers who, like you're saying, it's labor intensive to be able to just get out your phone and, with your finger, draw the square of where the paddock is, where you want them to be that day. And they are naturally, moving themselves. It sounds wild, coming from where you came from. And, if I can imagine Granddaddy Patterson might roll over in his grave hearing it. So, it's just like as technology changes and is introduced into such a rugged industry as ranching in West Texas, I believe that we will have opportunities to build our soil, to be able to capture more of the rain when we get it and affect operations in a way that you could increase your herd with minimal efforts on your own part. Right. And so then if you are leasing the land at $35 a head and you can have 200 head instead, then you've just doubled your annual income in that regard. So I think there's a lot of exciting things to consider. And like I said, it takes multiple generations working together and putting our heads together. And listening and learning and sharing and being willing to try things out and get it wrong and
Exactly.
get it better.
Well, and when you were saying the problems, 1, 2, 3, and I'm like, what I recognize as the solution is creativity and collaboration and understanding the wisdom and the knowledge that you have, and then recognizing that there are technologies that are coming about that, I mean, I couldn't have even imagined. And so I know that you couldn't imagine it if I couldn't imagine it.
No,
And it's just like, oh, so we can multi-paddock graze without building a fence. What? And so then it's like, okay, how much does it cost per whatever? And just figuring out how we can make it work for our space, or, you know, just however it needs to happen, and talking to people who have done these things and that are already.
And I've seen the devices. I've seen them advertised for finding your dog and what have you. How do you're running 200 cows? Each one of them has a
collar.
collar. Then you've got 200 collars to track.
Well, and this is where we have to find the sweet spot where you can afford it.
Well, and so, yes, there's 200 callers. And through one of these incentive programs, say you are paying for 50% of the collar and this NRCS program pays for the other 50% of the collar. Well, these collars are also solar powered. And what happens is every few seconds, it's registering movement. So if all of a sudden there's a collar that's not moving, then your phone will get an alert and say, hey, there could be a potential issue. And so you can look at it and then go check on it. Do you have a dead animal? Do you have an animal that their collar came off of them? But that's, so instead of saying, oh, I'm going to have to keep up with 200, it's just going to alert you at the one problem. And I spoke to a female rancher who's been using these collars for 3 years. She was she was the first United States rancher to begin using them. This was a collar that was developed in the EU. And she has had one collar come off one time. And, you know, the system worked exactly the way it says. And so she was at this Acres USA conference just as someone saying, hey, this has been a great solution for me, and talking about it to other people. I had dinner with our state agronomist over the holidays. He was passing through Lockhart and gave me a call, and I was asking him, what are some of the new programs that are coming up that we need to look into? And he said, you know, these no fencing operations, he said, you know, this is going to be the next big thing. And so that's one of the things they're focusing on. So we're just going to look into that and see what that looks like. We'll present to you what we find out and just see. And we'll share it with the community, because it's, you know, that's part of the struggle when you are new to this. Crystal and I just got our farm number last year. There's so much to learn, and there's so much information out there. And so sifting through all of it, that can take up all of your time. And it's like, time is money. I need to be out there doing something. So part of what we hope is that we can, as we're gathering this information, being able to share it with our community. That way it's just less work that everybody else has to do, and they can just pick up the idea and then contextually see if it works for their operation. Because it seems like a great idea. So then now we need to see if contextually this makes sense for us here.
Well, and just from what you described, 7 Diamond L, that tells me that that is a great idea. I mean, again, you wouldn't start off with 200 cattle, probably not. But anyway, you know, just trying and seeing how it worked. Just
when I say, what's your hope for the future of the ranch? And you said for, you know, us to people to continue being able to do this. Well, we have to figure out how to make it profitable, because, you know, we can't just make oil appear again, because
there's oil. I mean, there's supposedly 5 million barrels of oil underneath this dirt.
So this is also another question. What happened to the oil?
In 82.
Yeah.
That was the Aspermont places where
Okay.
the oil was.
Okay.
And there was 3 producing wells, and 2 of them went bad, and then there was only 1 left, and it went from 80 barrels a day to 1 or 2.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes things just run out, run their course, and you have to pivot.
Yeah.
And so, how can a family farm or ranch in this day and age become profitable again? And a lot of it is cutting out the middleman,
Yeah.
being able to heal the soil and to go direct to consumer with whatever it is you're doing, whether that's the hunting, whether or not it's
Mesquite beans. I mean, like seriously, something you
And-
have on your land.
Just an FYI, our soil doesn't need healing. Our soil is stronger than we produce as large a calf as people that feed their cows, feed their calves while they're on the cow.
Yes, when we say healing the soil, we mean adding biology back to the soil. Right now, there is no, in the farming part, like you're talking about open pasture land, and you've been an excellent steward of the land. I know that you have had the ranch in the Texas Park and Wildlife Management Program. You do all the things to take care of this ecosystem. When we say that, we're talking about the farmland that's commercially farmed and is plowed and is sprayed with conventional chemicals and pesticides and herbicides, where there's literally zero life
And
in the
organic
soil.
matter.
And so when we say heal the soil, we mean bringing the microbial life back to it.
Yeah.
Well, and I see where you're coming from, but like that 50 acres of hay grazer that Randy planted for me on the halves made 3 bales to the acre. Dead land does not make 3 bales to the acre.
You had one harvest of that, right?
Yes, it didn't rain anymore. If it rained a second time, we would have had at least 1 more cutting, maybe 2.
And so if you were to take that hay grazer that Randy conventionally farmed for you and you tested the nutrient density of that versus another plot of land that had been regeneratively farmed, you would find that the nutrient density of your hay grazer was significantly less than the other one.
Well, ours had 12% protein.
How do they do the testing? So you send it off once you've baled it. I would like to see what that looks like, what the paperwork looks like, and what that is, because it's nice to have a baseline for us moving forward, if we can get our hands on that.
I don't remember where it went.
So who told you? But that's where did you find out the 12% protein?
May have been Randy. I don't know. Thought he
Okay.
had it tested.
Well, we can ask him.
Yeah, we'll ask Randy. But yeah, and these are just those little things of one method of farming versus another. Being open and willing to just see and experience. And that's why Crystal and I are doing our little
That's why-
30-acre
why
experiment.
Y'all have that 30 acres.
Yes.
That's
and so
exactly
this is, that's the beauty of it. So anyway, thank you for being patient enough to sit with us and visit about this. I know it's not your favorite thing to do. So thank you. We love you very much. And we,
Love y'all.
I love you so much, and I appreciate. I'm so happy that we have this recorded.
Thank y'all.
I love you, Daddy. I love you, sister.
I love all of y'all.
Love
Yes.
you.
Love you. Thank you.
Connect with the Soil Sisters at txsoilsisters.co. Submit questions, guest or show ideas, and sponsorship inquiries. The Soil Sisters podcast was created and produced by Joanna Nuding. Editing and sound design are in the capable hands of the PodConnects Podcast Network.